I'm really excited to be here to share this session tonight, where we're going to tell you a little bit about our careers, how we got into science, a little bit about our research, and then we'll take any questions that you have. So as Kelly said, I'm Associate Professor Stephanie Hughes. I started my research career or my PhD at Victoria University of Wellington, and I've been at Otago for the last 12 years. I'm now the Director of the Brain Health Research Centre of Otago, which covers around 50 principal investigators and their lab groups. My particular research interest is in how the brain regulates waste disposal and waste removal, and how that has an impact on various diseases in the brain, including Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, and a group of childhood diseases which have very similar symptoms to Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, known as Batten disease.
I'm Associate Professor Dorothy Oorschot, so I work at the University of Otago, as you said. I do my PhD there as well, and after that was employed in the Department of Anatomy, where I'm still employed there. My research is on brain injury, in particular during development, so brain injury on babies, and that involves two main topics, which is effects of low oxygen levels on the baby and trying to rescue the brain from that sort of injury, and also the effect of infection. And those particular types of brain injury result in disorders like cerebral palsy and ADHD, and also schizophrenia. So these are the types of area that I'm working in, trying to work out better treatments to rescue the brain from those sorts of injuries.
Tēnā koutou katoa, he mihi nui tēnei kia koutou. So I'm Associate Professor Louise Parr-Brownlie. It's lovely to be here and to be meeting you all today. I am also at the University of Otago. I happen to also be in the Department of Anatomy. It's a very large department. I went down to Otago as an undergrad, and I did a Bachelor of Physical Education. So I was really interested in sport, actually, and performance, and understanding how the brain controlled movement. And from that, I have moved sideways in all sorts of directions, so that now my research career is primarily focused on understanding what changes in the brain and the way of the brain, the activity in the brain and the way that that activity controls movement, and then understanding what happens in Parkinson's disease, so how that activity changes. And then I use that information to predict maybe some new ways that we might be able to treat the disorder, and then go on and test that. And so we are working on some new treatment, potential treatment interventions. They are some way down the track, more than 5 years, probably 10 years away before that ever be with a patient. I do have a couple of other research areas of interest. One of them is chronic pain, and understanding again what changes in the brain for people with living with chronic pain. And a third area of interest is understanding Māori perspectives of neurosurgical approaches in order to treat neurological disorders. So that's never been explored. We need to understand that so we can offer better service delivery for Māori patients.
I'm Associate Professor Yiwen Zheng. I'm also from the University of Otago, and I'm from the Department of Pharmacology. I'm originally from China, so I did my undergrad university study in China, in Shanghai Medical University, and then I worked as a researcher and teacher in the Institute of Clinical Pharmacology for 8 years before I moved to New Zealand, and where I did my PhD at Otago University, and then I worked, all the way through my, career path as a postdoctoral research fellow, as a research fellow, a senior research fellow, and then associate professor. So my research interest, I'm particularly interested in auditory disorder called tinnitus.
I want to ask the panel, when did they first realise they wanted a career in science?
When I was at high school, I had the opportunity to study human biology. That was my favourite topic. Went on from there. I was in Australia at that time, and you could do a degree in anatomy and human biology at the local university, University of Western Australia. So I completed an anatomy degree, a BSc in anatomy, and then I did an honours year, which is a research year. And it was when I did the research year that I realised I wanted to keep on going in science. So it took me a while to get to that point, but it really just built on what you're interested in earlier in your life.
For me, I think I did it by accident. So I, as I mentioned before, I was good at sport and I enjoyed sport, and I took all sciences and maths at high school. And at the end of my seventh form, my final year at university, if I didn't get into phys ed, I wasn't going to go to university at all. So I did get in, I went down and loved what I was doing, and just kept taking papers and things of interest that tended to be really hardcore science that I loved again and again and again. At the end of my degree, I wasn't sure at that stage what I was going to do. I did a year of physio and went, that's not what I want to do. And then I went and taught in the physiology department. And during that first year, I learned a lot, and I learned a lot about teaching, and I kind of went, maybe I need to try research. And I started doing my research papers for my masters at that time, purely as this is something I want to try. I then did my research year for my masters, it went well, and I've just taken it step by step. And as I've taken each step, I was married before I even started my postgraduate study, and every step I was saying to my husband, well, if I do my PhD, I might want to go overseas to postdoc. And he was like, okay. And I got to that stage, and yes, we went overseas, and I postdoced in the Washington DC area of the United States. And then, so he's just followed me on this journey all along, so which has been an amazing thing to have someone so supportive.
Because I'm from a medical centered family, so my grandfather, my father, my auntie are all doctors. So I'm living in a kind of the family all doing health, all doing like medical career, but they all want me to be a medical doctor, but I knew from very a young teenage age, I'm always curious about why this medicine can treat this disease. I want to find out why. So so I'm just very curious and very interested in what's behind the medicine, what's behind the disease and things. So I just want to do research, and so when I get to apply for university, and my grandfather especially, he wants me to be a medical doctor, and I said no, I want to do research. Then my father, he helped me, he just said, okay, if you want to do research, I think pharmacology is a good, area. So I said, what's pharmacology? Then he explained, what's pharmacology and what it's, because I want to do research related to health, to medicine or that. So they said, oh, that's very good. So I went to a very good medical school, in China, but I didn't, pursue as a medical doctor. I always wanted to do research, so that's what I did.
Growing up through school, I was always interested in either science or social studies. I think that came from really inspirational teachers that I had. My family background is in science, so my dad, my grandfather, great-grandfather and great-great-grandfather were all land surveyors, so very engineering, land-based sciences. So there's a little bit of pressure there for me to continue on that, otherwise I broke the chain. So my first year at university was actually in maths. I was going to be a maths major. But I found by the end of the first year, all I was doing was memorising a whole lot of facts, and there was no real understanding behind that memorisation of facts. And at the same time, I was taking a couple of biology papers, and I found they were much more in depth in terms of understanding what was going on. By that stage, I realised I had an interest in medicine as well, so I got into the more health science-based field. I came through, as I said, Victoria University, where they didn't have any medical or anatomy or physiology actually at the time. So I've done pretty much a pure molecular sciences-based degree. I did genetics and biochemistry, and I finally fell into neuroscience quite late. So it wasn't until my PhD where I happened, just a chance, and there's a lot of chance goes on in science and your career path. Happened to stumble on a project that was being offered on something called Batten disease, which is a very rare childhood disease which shares many similarities, as I said previously, with Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, but it affects very young children. And ever since then, I've kind of continued on that path. So it's been, I don't know how many years now, I hate to think, since I've been working in that field, and it's just become something that I've become completely passionate about, and I'm going to find it very hard to ever leave. What qualities do you think you need to have as a scientist to really succeed?
Persistence, drive, focus. There's a lot of enjoyment when an experiment goes well, when things go well. It is amazing what that buzz is like. Those days are not every day. So there's a lot of grindy kind of days. You just have to be doing the same thing every day and do it properly every day. As you get further through and to the stage that we're at, a lot of what we do is applying for the money to actually do the work, to get a grant, to do the work, and submitting the paper. So we've done a whole heap of research, and we send the paper off, and both of those things have a lot of no's. So you have to develop quite a thick skin as well, or get used to just knowing that that is not personal. This is just an opportunity for you to reflect on that again and put in a better application or improve the paper that you're going to publish. So persistence is really important.
Knowing how to accept rejection is probably the biggest thing you learn in this field. But as always said, the highs can be incredibly high. It's like a natural drug. What you do when things go wrong and when you don't get that paper or that grant accepted.
Well, sometimes part of that rejection process is actually a good thing, because people make comments and you go, actually, that is a good point and we need to think about that and address that. And then you do that, and then you submit the paper again, and it's actually a better paper than it was. So the journey was actually, in the end, this is a better paper than it was when I first submitted it. And we're proud of this paper, and it does cover the caveats or whatever now than it didn't before. And sometimes you get the rejection and they might say, well, I said one revision, please do another experiment. And you do that other experiment and it just fits the puzzle. You go, actually that was really good during that extra experiment. Okay, it took another 6 months to do that experiment, saying, so sometimes I always try and find the positive in it, in the rejection, and put hope in the equation. And sometimes hope is just submitting it to another journal, and rather than doing another experiment. But it's just, partly rejection is part of it. I don't know, there was also a long time ago, Enid Blyton, and she as an author, she was really successful. And she said to her brother, if you can't cope with rejection, you'll never succeed. And I usually just try to find the hope and the positive in that particular context. How can I move this on in a positive way?
React to it, positively is very important, because you need to realize, what you do is actually, help to make the paper better, make your study better. So yeah,
school, we do work in teams a lot. So it's a shared experience. And I kind of have a personal rule that you can be whatever, so whether that's grumpy, angry, sad, crying, for a day, and then you've got to move on. You can't stay in that state. So you've got to transition that over to how do I get this into a positive experience.
We all lead teams, research teams, so we've got several people, many people, sometimes 20 people in it, in very big lab groups. Some of those people, or most of the people, will be funded by grants, and so we all have funding that comes from the government, from Tertiary Education Commission, so our salaries will be covered, but we need to find that money for all our staff. We do also have students who are free labour, so they pay us to be here. Yeah, but it's good training. It is good training. But yeah, so we, as heads of a lab, we will write the major part of the grants, but it's also a learning opportunity for our more senior staff and students to start developing their own skills.
And the students also can have scholarships, like PhD scholarships, master scholarships, and we can apply for those as well on their behalf. So that helps them as well.
So the question is, what is our success rate for
Yeah, that's a
grants?
good way to.
Yep. So for grants, I used to sort of work it out. I think every year I have about 50-50 success rate. Some years it's worse than that. Some years it's slightly better than that. Depends how many grants apply for. Papers, it's very rare to get a paper accepted first time. Very rare. Mainly because we head for the very top journal that we can, and we slowly work our way down. If we started at the bottom, we might get an acceptance, but we go as high as we possibly can. So there's something called impact factor in science, which basically says this is the best journal in the world. This is where you need to head for. So it depends where you head as to, but I'd say probably on average, we would probably revise a paper and maybe submit it to a different journal, probably 2 or 3 times or so, depending on how it's done.
And usually, in terms of eventually the paper usually is published. Yeah. So usually, likely, once you go through the process of writing it up, that paper will be published. There's not very many that are not published. It's ones that you haven't started writing that you might not get to publish. That's just because you haven't had enough time to write it. For the grants, obviously, if it's rejected, it's rejected. But as Louise said, you use it. Okay, how can you make the next grant better?
Okay, so there's a statistic that less than 30% of science and technical workers around the world are women. And that seems still stagnating quite high. And I think at least in our university, those numbers as you are down in the lower levels are probably more 60-30, 60-40 in favour of women. We still have an issue with women going up through the ranks, and maybe we want to talk a little bit about how we're going to change that statistic so that there is a better split between males and females in those top positions.
The undergraduates, there are more women than there are men. And as you go through neuroscience in particular, that remains through PhD and even postdoc. As you go further through, depending on your department, those statistics can change markedly. Our own department, anatomy, it's pretty much 50%, actually women are probably slightly more than 50%, until actual professors, and then it's probably 60% men and 40% women. Those statistics are actually very good in sciences on the whole. So some of the things that happen during your career, so at school and as undergrads, women generally outperform the men. What happens as you get further through, the selection criteria start to become biased. People don't think they are, but they are. And so there are a lot of studies that have been double-blind, which means that the people that are analysing the data don't actually know which groups are which. And what they've found is that if you have job applicants, so you have 5 applicants, and some of them might originally have been male or female, but you switch things. So sometimes this applicant one is a male and sometimes it's a female, and all the same people apply. What they've found is that when that applicant has a female's name, generally everything is rated much lower. And so that's the perception of when you have a female's name, how everything is rated is just changed. And that comes down to either implicit or explicit biases. So there's a lot of work around getting people to understand the biases that they carry. It is changing. We are forging ahead in the way that we get out when we're on a panel. I know that I sit there and if there's ever a discussion around something that's going into that space that it should not be discussed, then I will just say that that's not appropriate. Let's keep it back to the facts. But setting up a panel and having the criteria of what you want from your applicant is really important before you even look at one application, so that you've got the criteria there. So often in the past I've heard you know the good applicant when they come, which really means I want a clone of me from most of the people on the panel, which means I want another guy just like me. So we are definitely changing that. One of the outcomes for what that means for women in science, yes, it tends to be more difficult for us to get through. A beautiful statistic came out in the last 4-5 weeks, where over a career, because of these biases, we earn $400,000 a year less because it takes us longer to go through our career trajectory. And when they look at the analysis about when people apply for promotion, actually the women are more qualified than the men are. But what happens is that perception of a woman has to show evidence that we can do that next thing, that we're absolutely qualified. A man only has to show the potential. That's a 5+ year difference in the career time it takes you to get there.
We have applications that have no reference to gender. I think the problem is that as women we tend to write in a certain sort of way. So our cover letter will be completely different to what a male would write. There was some interesting analysis that came out in the last few days actually, where they were comparing a reference for a job for a man versus a woman. And the type of words they used for the woman were they're caring, they're compassionate, they're helpful, you know, they work well as a team, whereas the male was they show strong leadership, determination, and they're going to get the job done. And immediately, even if you didn't say this was, you know, he or she, there's a bias there. And I think the point that Louise made as well, that you want to clone it yourself, basically. If you're on a panel, you want to find someone that's very much like you. Certainly when I went through my undergrad and postgrad degrees, I had no female mentors. I had no one that I could aspire to because there was no one there. They were all males that were above my level. And I think women coming through now are really incredibly lucky that there are far more female role models that we can use. And that's something I want to ask the panel. Who are your female role models and where did you get those female role models? Because I think we've all come through that situation where we have had more males at more senior levels.
Well, I guess my experience is most of the people involved in my career have been male, and they have been people who have been supportive and given you opportunities and encouraged you on. And it's only more recently that we've actually had more women in senior roles, and you can once you see them, obviously you can aspire to that as well, which is, I think, a good thing. I think you just need, part of the process is actually putting yourself forward and going to the next level, whatever that level might be, and doing the best you can in the context that you're in. And in that sense, I think the Neurological Foundation has been excellent for providing, for example, research funding for us, which is hard to get from, sometimes from other sources, especially as you get more senior. And part of your trajectory up, so to speak, is dependent on getting research funding and getting the staff to do the research, to publish the papers and so on. So research funding is critical to your momentum and your achievement. And this foundation has actually helped us all with that process. And especially, as I said, it's important as you get more senior, because there was a statistic recently come out of Australia where it's basically showed that once you were senior, like associate professor or professor, as a female, it was much harder to get the major grants as the lead PI, the lead principal investigator. But you're less likely to get the $1 million grants compared to the males. And that's sometimes just perception bias as well, that there was a perception that you won't be able to deliver on that.
So for mentors for me, so postgraduate study, I was mentored by a male, and he was generally very supportive. At my department, there were almost all men, as I went through that experience. My postdoctoral supervisor was a woman, and I had quite a different experience actually from working in that different country, different leader and leader style. But what I do want to say is that mentors are incredibly important. And so there are some mentors are people that you catch up with periodically, just a conversation, sometimes even in the hall. But they seem to just pop up at the right time and offer that nice piece of advice or just a word of support on that day you need it. And then I've also got some important mentors that have been with me now, some of them for 5 or 6 years, and have helped me transition through from being a lecturer to a senior lecturer, associate professor now. As I've gone through higher and higher, what I have been struck with is some of the women that have forged that path before me. So I'm very lucky, I have fantastic mentors. One I do want to mention is a woman called Dr. Di McCarthy. She was a professor up in Auckland. She ended up being on the council for the Royal Society. So the Royal Society is kind of the association for the scientists. So she was at a more governance level, and then she became the equivalent of a CEO for the Royal Society. And during that time, she instigated the national level Women in Leadership course that, as you go through to higher and higher levels, we get the opportunity to do. And being able to go on those courses is so important to meet the other women that are stepping into those kind of roles. So one of the roles that I have now is that I'm a co-director for the 18 World National Science Challenge. So this is a national science challenge, so it's across the country. We fund research for other researchers up to 30 million over 10 years. And so now I have the opportunity to decide, or be part of the team that decides the direction we go in, where that money should be spent, what those criteria are for the priorities of New Zealand, what we need to understand to support older New Zealanders to live independently for as long as possible. And so Di McCarthy has been very important for me to step into that role and gain confidence.
Mentoring, during your career development is very important, especially when you're in the junior stage. It's very important. So for me, it's all male in my career development, but they are very helpful, very supportive. Like my PhD supervisor, a professor in pharmacology, and he is very supportive. And I remember, as a young PhD student coming from China, as a cultural difference. So I'm always not very confident with what I'm doing, what I should say, all that. So he has been just encouraged me. And I remember he always say, you know, in this particular research area, you are the best. You know everything, then, you know it than everyone else. So you need to believe yourself, and you need to sell yourself. So that's something I will remember, I get benefit, for, later at every stage of my career development. So yes, a very good mentor is very important.
I think that's important. It doesn't matter whether the mentor is male or female. It's finding the right mentor for you that gives you the type of encouragement that you need at the time. And no one can tell you that this is the best mentor for you. You need to find that relationship with the right person for the right skills that you need to develop at the time, or the right support that you need. So yeah, mentors are critical.
Would you say as a young female going into the science field, a male mentor is beneficial in the way to help teach you that sort of resilience and the sort of skills, I'd say, that make you stand out from like other applicants that get pushed down because of, I don't know, general woman bias? I don't know how to really word the question.
Yeah, so the question is whether male mentors can add benefit, I guess, and show you the skills that you need to be more male-like in a way.
It's stupid.
Yeah, and I think that's probably true. And it's a general stereotype. Not all males are that self-confident and propel themselves up the ladder. There's a lot of women that do that just as well. So it's finding the right person that will give you, as I said, the right skills to benefit, to get you where you need to go. But I think it's been really important for me seeing people progress through the system. I think when I started my postdocs, I'm never going to get to senior lecturer. I'm never going to get a lecturing job for a start, but I'm never going to go up the scale. But seeing people go through that ahead of me has been really vital for them, giving me that confidence that I can do it as well, that I'm not that far behind. And then finding those mentors that also believe that I can do it has been really vital.
I would say that you don't have one mentor, you have many. And it does depend what you need is different at different times in your career. So sometimes you have mentors that early in your career that they don't follow you through later. You keep in contact with them because they are interested in your career progression. So yeah, have a range of mentors. So I have two in particular that I have had really good advice from. One happens to be a male, one happens to be a female. But they've got different skill sets, and I chose them for very specific reasons at that time. And it's kind of like having a parent coming you along and guiding you. And sometimes what's really lovely is that they hear about an opportunity and they go, I know the person for that, and they put your name forward.
So there are some strong female personalities, if you like, or yeah. So it really just depends on the context.
The number one question that comes up as female in particular is how we maintain a work-life balance. Which always makes everybody laugh because who's got a work-life balance? It's a work balance as far as I can work out. But maybe we can go through the panel and have a bit of a chat about how that actually works.
I suppose, you always try your best to, keep that balance. We are doing science, we are, scientists in a career, but we also have our family, our kids. So yes, you will have to work hard to try keep that balance. So I think for me, when my kids were little, it's pretty hard. So I had to work extremely hard in order to keep my research going, as well as look after my kids, the family, everything they do, their sports, all the, things, millions of things kids do.
So for me, I do enjoy most aspects of my job, not necessarily everything and not necessarily every day. But the fact that I do love a lot of it makes it a little easier when I do have to work hard, which is the reality most of the time. There are some amazing opportunities. I feel very privileged in what I do. I get to do what I love most of the time. And there are things about, so most of my whānau is up in Auckland. I am travelling out to Auckland for work. Quite often I get the opportunity to choose the day I travel. So if I travel on then I've got to be in Auckland on a Monday or a Friday, then I spend the weekend with my siblings and my nieces and nephews and so on. So, that's making the most of an opportunity. Closer to home, I have an incredibly supportive husband. We pretty much have role reversal. And that works really well for us. And I said before, he travelled around the world, he followed me around, and we've really enjoyed that. And I do have some boundaries around what I do. So if I commit to something, I'm there, and I'm there wholeheartedly. But I try and protect, for me, it's a Saturday, and I spend that time, it's very precious to spend it with my husband and my dog.
So I think it is, we do work hard, but it is important to have some time off as well. So for me, it's a Sunday that I try and protect to have my day off. That day I spend time with friends and with family. My family are overseas, so we still ring rather than Zoom or whatever, because they haven't all got computers. But I spend that time connecting with my friends and family on that day, and try and ring-fence it. Now sometimes there's various deadlines or whatever, and you want to do a good job, so sometimes you may work on that day, or some of that day, but largely to protect it. Because in my view, you cannot keep doing 24/7. You can't sustain 24/7, so you do need to factor in the downtimes, and it makes you a more rounded person as well, interacting with people, and also with people who not necessarily in your normal work sphere. So it's enriching in that sense as well. So that's what I do in order to try and get the work-life balance.
I have a situation in my lab group at the moment where I've got several staff who have young children, so they're working quite shortened hours. But interestingly, they're probably the most efficient people in my group. They're very organised. They will come to work, they will get going, they'll get everything done, they'll be out of there by 3, but everything's really efficient. So I think it's possible. They're still making really good progress with their careers, things being held up or anything. But I agree that the time out is really important, actually scheduling some time and not letting things creep into your weekend. Saying, you're going to have a Saturday or a Sunday off, and find something else that you enjoy. So in my case, I have 3 dogs, and one of them we do agility. And that's something I can't be thinking about work when I'm trying to make my dog jump over the next jump or through a weave. So yeah, having that time out and finding something you also to take your mind off what you're completely passionate about at work often, it's quite hard to sort of take your mind off